So this time around I'm going to talk you through my 5 kind of trashy reads. So again, remember these are not necessarily, well, these ones are kind of not great, but these are sort of things that you wouldn't expect to be great works of literature. They're the kind of things that you read as like a nice, comforting, easy read if you're having like a tough time, or they're just the kind of genre that you enjoy. So my 5 best were often like all romance or romantasy. These are going to have a little bit more of a mix, I think, in them. These are the 5 ones that I read this year in that kind of genre, so like the easy comfort reads that maybe didn't quite hit for me. I'd be interested in what you think of them if you've read any. But yeah, for me these 5 just didn't quite live up to what they could have been. And again, do not take anything overly from me calling them trash. I think it's just because I don't think they're meant to be eminent works of literature. So I started the good one with what I called a Gilmore exploitation book, which is this idea of setting things sort of loosely in that sort of Gilmore Girls-esque world where you expect it to be in a small town, like there to be romance, maybe a smart talking woman pulling for a grumpy kind of guy. I think that works really well for romance. I did buy this year a book called A Cinnamon Falls Mystery, which is a cozy crime book in that kind of Gilmore exploitation world. You can tell it's in that because of the kind of cover. In fact, it's got cinnamon in the title. They often have like a spice, like cinnamon or pumpkin spice or something like that. And the title is often a play on, the author name is often a bit of a play on the Gilmore kind of thing. So this is R.L. Gilmore. I don't think the world of that kind of Gilmore Girls-esque thing really works for crime. Personally, I don't think that's maybe the best way to go with this kind of thing. I think it works with those kind of romance books. So I think if you read like the Laurie Gilmore, there's Harper Graham as well, like other people. I read one called Falling Like Leaves. It was like a YA one. They're all quite enjoyable because you know what you're getting into. This is like a small town cozy crime, and it just didn't quite hit for me. I didn't overly buy the crime and the criminal. I think that was sort of, it was okay, but it wasn't as good as other cozy crime books that you can read. I love cozy crime as a genre, but this didn't quite fulfill that really like nice cozy crime vibe, and it just didn't sort of fit into what I would expect from that kind of Gilmore Girls linked world either. So it kind of didn't quite know which way it was going to go. It wanted to have like a bit of the romance and a bit of the small town stuff that you would get from a Gilmore Girlsy type thing with a cozy crime attached, and so it kind of went for two things and didn't sort of achieve either of them as well as it could have done for me. So yeah, it just kind of let me down a little bit. I think it's maybe because it's not the genre for that kind of thing. I think maybe they need to stick to sort of doing romances in that kind of sort of niche rather than fitting in a cozy crime, because I just don't think it kind of worked together. My next one is The Baby Dragon Bakery. I enjoy romantasy quite a lot. I think it's a genre that works for me, especially the cozy ones. So I really enjoyed The Baby Dragon Cafe, which was the first one in this series. I thought it was brilliant. I had really cute like baby dragons, which were great. It worked really well in the sense of sort of building that world and having a purpose to it, and the characters in it were great, and you kind of got really involved and really enjoyed it. The Baby Dragon Bakery just didn't feel like it followed on from that really well. My issues with this were that it felt like a romance book that had been written and then like the dragons have been shoehorned in to make it fit that kind of cozy fantasy genre more than it actually being written in that genre itself, if you know what I mean. So I felt like it could have been a romance anywhere, and then they just shoehorned in the baby dragons to make it sort of fit a kind of currently hot selling thing. And because of that, you didn't buy the world in the same way as you did the first one, and the dragons and things didn't feel as relevant. There was less of like the world around that sort of built into this one, and it kind of put me off wanting to read any more in the series a little, which is a shame because I thought the first one was outstanding. So I think this one just didn't have that same kind of quality to it as the first, and didn't feel like it was really building like that fantasy world, which I think you need to do if you're going to sell a cozy fantasy or any kind of fantasy book. You need to have some reason for those things to be there, and this one didn't feel like it really had that beyond, like I said, as a marketing tool to sell more copies. My third book in the sort of not great trash is Snug in Iceland. This is a romance book set in Reykjavik, in Iceland. So this woman goes out there, leaves her kind of boyfriend who's not happy about her taking this promotion to go and set up a shop in Iceland for this chain of shops that she works for. There is an awful lot in this book about working in a shop and setting up a shop. If you're interested in that as a business, this might be a good read because it will tell you a lot about that. It doesn't, however, tell you a lot about Iceland, which is a shame because Iceland is a beautiful place. It is a country that is like nowhere else on earth, and as a book set somewhere like that, Iceland itself should be a character. You should know what the scenery is like, you should know what smells and culture is like, and the food and the temperatures and things. It has so much scope for setting any kind of fiction in it that this just doesn't follow through on. It also doesn't help that no one in it has any real surface, any real depth to them. Like, it's all kind of superficial. You don't really buy any of the characters or like them because there's no sort of development of them in any way. You have the girl who sets up a shop. You have hunky Icelandic tour guide who is the love interest. You have slightly annoying boyfriend back at home. And they all do kind of things that are wrong. And so you don't really know if you root for any of them by the end of it. You don't know who you want to end up together because none of them really overly are great people. It's another one a bit like things like the Cinnamon Falls mystery that started this. It has potential to be really good, but just didn't kind of follow through on it. I'd be interested in anyone else has read this series and been to Iceland, because I don't think it does the setting justice. And I'd be interested to know what other people thought of that if you've read it. I don't know how popular a series this is. I picked it up at a book event, and the author was talking to me about the fact that they travelled to Iceland and really enjoyed it, and I kind of hoped that I would get like that lovely feel of the country when I read it, and it just didn't get there for me. I also this year decided to check out Katie Price. At one point she outsold all of the Booker Prize authors as an author. I don't think she wrote them herself. I think they were ghost written. This one had a lot of issues. It's the only Katie Price book I've read, but there were a lot of moments in it that you just didn't agree with. Moments where the kind of person who was a singer and wanted to make a comeback was not wanting to be chubby because they'd eaten some food, and things like that, that were just kind of giving like not a great message to people. And again, like, all the people in it were kind of awful. Like, you don't really like anyone. The main character is not likable, and you're meant to root for her. You're meant to root for her finding someone that she's going to fall in love with, and I don't think you really cared that much because she's not that nice a person. There was a lot about this that kind of was interesting. You know, it's like a decent kind of plot, but for me the characters and some of the messages in it just didn't work. They may be a bit dated, but yeah, they're not kind of healthy in like the long term of like, you wouldn't really want people reading it and thinking that that was a good way to think about yourself or other women. So yeah, there were definitely some bits about this that didn't work for me. And then my kind of top trashy trash on this list of 5 is Fireborn. This is a book that I think I made a video about, ranting about it after I'd read it, and every time I go back and see it on my reading list, I'm just like, oh, about. This has the premise of someone who, or a few people who are training to be dragon riders. These are like the top echelons and protectors of this world. One of them has been from a previous ruling family of like the regime that was deposed before the one that is currently in. However, the problems that I have with this are that, again, you don't overly like the characters. The regime that was deposed didn't sound great, and that is who they're fighting. There's like rebels left from there who want to bring that back, that they want to fight. But the regime that's currently in isn't great either. Like, it kind of sorts people into an aptitude level, and you can only work in like things that are assigned to that. And if you're assigned to something that's different to your family, you have to work in that level and you can't leave it. Which again just isn't great. Do you know what I mean? You're like going, I don't like this regime. Maybe the one that the rebels are fighting for is better, but apparently it's not better, because that's what they deposed. And so you're left reading a book where you actually don't want anyone to win, because the current thing they have is awful, and apparently the thing that was there before was awful. And tied in with that are kind of characters, again, that you sort of don't really like or overly want to succeed because they have weird ideas and views, and have done some weird things. So you sort of end up with a book that you're reading where you don't overly like the people and you don't want anyone to win. And I think if you have that as the premise of your book, I don't really know why you would want to read any more in the series, because there is no desire to see what happens to it, because you don't particularly want any of the things to succeed. I think when you're writing this kind of dystopian book or fantasy book where people are going to be fighting for something, you kind of have to make one of the things better to make it make sense. You know, like if you think about things like Star Wars or other fantasy things, the bad guys are objectively bad, and they might be fighting for it, and you can sort of see why they're fighting for it, but you can see why the rebels should win. In this case, you kind of know the history of both of them, and you don't want either of them to win, so that you're like at the point of reading it going, why am I reading this? Because I don't actually care who wins. Again, if anyone else has read this is a trilogy of books, and it's not one that I will go back and read any more of, because I really didn't like the first one. So I'd be intrigued if anyone has got to the end and can tell me if it actually improves and you do care about who wins, or someone is objectively better, because in the first book no one is. But yeah, if you do have opinions, if you've got to the end of the trilogy, do let me know, because like I said, I'm not going back for any more, and I'd be intrigued to hear what other people think, because I'm sure, as I've said at the start of both of these videos, these are my opinions. These are things that didn't work for me. I'm sure there are lots of people who've read all of these and think they're brilliant. So if you do have a different opinion, do let me know.